Chapter 16. Questions. If you could just put this microphone up your shirt and attach it there. I took the microphone from the woman who held it out and did as she'd asked. I couldn't get it attached though. Suddenly all my fingers had turned into thumbs. She smiled. Here, let me. Gratefully, I let her get on with it. She clipped the tiny microphone to one of my buttonholes. I wondered how powerful the microphone was. Would it be able to pick up my pounding heart? Because that's what it was doing. Hammering, pounding, drumming like it was going out of fashion. And I had a furious, charging elephants in my stomach. Mum and Dad were strangely quiet too. Dr. Bryce and Dr. Ehrlich chatted to each other as if they didn't have a care in the world. I envied them. They'd obviously done this many times before. A short woman with blonde hair tied back in a ponytail appeared in front of me from nowhere. She smiled at me. Just a touch of makeup. I drew away in horror. No, thank you. What did she take me for? She smiled at the look on my face. It's just some powder to take the shine off your face while you're in front of the cameras. You don't want to shine like an oil slick, do you? I don't mind, I told her. I'm not an actor or anything. I don't need makeup. I'll let you into a little secret, she whispered. Footballers, boxers, sports stars in general, they all have makeup on when they're interviewed on the telly. That's what makes them look so good. Footballers? Really? I was still suspicious. Really? The makeup lady nodded. Well, alright then, I agreed reluctantly. But only powder. I don't want any mascara or lipstick or stuff like that. She laughed. Of course not. Behind me I could hear Mum and Dad laughing too. I couldn't help flinching a bit when she dabbed at my face with a dry sponge covered in powder. The moment the press conference was over, I'd find the nearest sink and this mutt would be coming straight off. I watched as she patted some powder on Mum's face and then Dad's. He looked about as impressed as I had been. Yeah, it wasn't so funny when he had to do it. I looked around. My elephants were still charging. Mum, what if I say something wrong? I whispered anxiously. You won't, dear, Mum smiled. Just answer each question truthfully, and then shut up. Dad started grinning. I frowned at Mum. If she thought she was putting my mind at ease, she was very much mistaken. The trick is to tell what you know, but don't tell all you know, she continued. Dad looked at her surprised. What makes you such an expert? I read it in a magazine somewhere, she replied vaguely. Dr. Bryce, aren't you nervous? I interrupted his conversation with Dr. Ehrlich. I'm always nervous at these things, Dr. Bryce admitted, to my surprise. He leaned closer and lowered his voice. But someone once told me that if you have to talk to a lot of people, just imagine them all naked, it makes you less nervous. I burst out laughing. Really? Really? Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey? Doctors? Cameron? We're ready for you now. A man wearing headphones with a microphone attached ushered us from the waiting room, then strode ahead to lead the way down a grey corridor. No one spoke. My mouth was so dry I wondered how I'd get out one word, never mind a sentence if anyone asked me anything. But hopefully all the questions would be directed at the doctors. I couldn't think what anyone would want to ask me, apart from how I was feeling. And that I could answer, just about. We turned another corner, then came to a set of double doors with the large words, Quiet please, written on them. A red bulb was situated on the wall above the door, but it wasn't switched on. The man opened the double doors for us, and we all trooped in, Dr. Bryce first and me last. We were in a large studio with lots of huge lights hanging from the ceiling, and at one end of the studio was a large table on a long platform. The table practically groaned under the weight of all the microphones that were on it. I'd never seen so many microphones in my entire life, and every light in the place seemed to be trained on the table. Rows of chairs were placed in front of the microphones, but they were in dark shadow. There was an aisle down the middle of the chairs, and I could see a TV camera being pushed up it, closer to the table. Reporters and journalists sat on the chairs with digital recorders and notepads. On either side of the chairs were yet more men and women with cameras. The cameras started flashing as soon as they became aware of our presence. Everyone stood up and turned to face us. An instant buzz filled the studio. Huge, heavy studio cameras swung around to follow our progress. I wanted to sit at the end of the table, to be as inconspicuous as possible, but I was ushered to the chair next to Dr. Bryce, and he sat in the middle with the lights full on him. Glancing down the table, I saw Dr. Ehrlich at one end of the table, and on the other side of Dr. Bryce. Then there was me and Mum and Dad at the other end of the table. As I looked around, I felt like a rabbit caught in the headlights of a car. I sat in my chair, frozen. I couldn't have moved at that moment, even if the whole studio was on fire. It was like being in a car trying to get out of the house all over again, except this was worse. I couldn't make out any faces, not full faces. They were shrouded in shadow. The intensely bright lights trained on our table were baking my head and making my skin prickle. If only the camera flashes would stop, just for a second. "Quiet please, 5 seconds to air," a man's voice yelled out from the floor above us. Instantly the camera flashes stopped. 4, 3, I looked around panic-stricken. This was just a dress rehearsal, wasn't it? We would get the chance to hear the questions and practice first, wouldn't we? A red light flashed on the TV camera directly in front of our table. "I'd like to begin by reading the statement," Dr. Bryce immediately announced. He glanced down at a sheet of paper before looking into a huge TV camera ahead. "For years now, the number of people waiting for heart transplants has far exceeded the number of hearts available for transplantation. At our research lab, we've been working on ways to overcome this problem. Our solution has been to use the hearts of specially bred and genetically altered animals, in this case pigs. Once government restrictions were lifted a few years ago, there was no reason why we couldn't proceed, confident of success. Cameron here is living proof that pig heart transplantations do work. We've all been amazed at his progress. He's fitter and has a better quality of life now than he ever did. Cameron is our first success, but I know that he won't be our last. I think at long last we can offer a viable remedy to those in urgent need of heart transplant, who have been told time and time again that there are no hearts available. Thank you." As I watched the doctor deliver his speech, an icy feeling squeezed at my stomach and started to fan out through the rest of my body. He made the whole thing sound so cold, so clinical. He could have been talking about a new make of car that would make everyone's life better, or a new brand of microwavable chip. Dr. Bryce sat back, his hands on his lap, his fingers linked. I looked from his hands to his face and realised something. He was acting. I don't mean in an obvious theatrical way, but his speech was well rehearsed and professionally delivered, and even his current pose was staged. I looked away, confused by my feelings. Why was I so disappointed? "Dr. Bryce, how long did... Dr. Bryce, when did you first... Dr. Bryce, where did you..." A tide of questions rushed towards us. Dr. Bryce smiled. "One at a time, please. Dr. Bryce, how long was the operation?" 12 hours. "Dr. Bryce, do you think it's ethically responsible to use the heart of a pig in a transplant operation?" "Our pigs are specially selected, genetically altered and bred. We've spent many years and millions of pounds in research, making sure that we are responsible. And if we hadn't performed the operation then, Cameron wouldn't be sitting here now," Dr. Bryce answered easily. "Ask the millions of people around the world who are dying of heart disease whether or not they think heart transplants are a good idea. I'll let all those dying people do my talking for me. But we're not talking about hearts donated by loved ones or of those who died. We're talking about taking the heart of a domestic animal and put it into another human," another journalist stated. "And if the heart works and prolongs life?" asked Dr. Bryce. "Is that your only consideration?" asked yet another journalist. "As a doctor, it's my sworn duty to improve the quality of life. I'm not going to apologise for that." "Don't you think you're behaving like Dr. Frankenstein and creating monsters?" "Are you calling me a monster?" I got in before Dr. Bryce could. The woman who'd asked the question turned to me. "I didn't mean to imply that you're a monster as such, but how do you feel knowing that a pig's heart is beating inside your body?" "It's just a heart, a muscle. It has nothing to do with what I am or how I think or behave or feel," I replied. "Did Dr. Bryce tell you to say that?" "Dr. Bryce doesn't have to tell me what to say," I said, annoyed. "I've got a brain of my own and a mouth of my own. I'm not some kind of ventriloquist dummy with his hand up my jumper." Cameron nudged me and mouthed the warning. "But Mum, they keep asking stupid questions," I protested. The only trouble was, I'd forgotten about the microphone attached to my shirt, and my voice boomed out around the studio. "Sorry," I quickly mumbled. I bent my head, hoping and praying that this was just a dress rehearsal. Something told me that it wasn't, though. "Cameron, how are you feeling?" "Fine, thank you." From now on, I keep my answers short and sweet. "Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey, what do you say to all those people who'll accuse you of allowing your son to be used as a guinea pig?" asked someone else. I looked down at my lap at this point, remembering that those were the exact words Mum had used when Dad first told us about Dr. Bryce. "Anyone who has a child who is ill with heart disease will know what all of us were going through," said Mum. "Our son was very ill. He only had a few more months to live. This was a chance at life, and he wanted to grab it with both hands. Neither his father nor I could or would stand in his way under those circumstances." "Mrs. Kelsey, do you believe that you did the right thing in allowing the operation to go ahead?" "Yes, I do," Mum said at once. "It's what Cameron wanted, and that's all that mattered." "And would you do the same thing again?" "Under the same circumstances? Yes, of course," Mum replied without hesitation. "And you, Cameron, any regrets?" Like Dr. Bryce said, I wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for the operation, I said. No, I wouldn't be here now. I'd be at home lying in bed or reading or playing on the computer, just passing the time until there was no more time to pass. Do you feel any different, Cameron? No, not at all, just fitter. Will your son be returned to school, Mrs. Kelsey? Yes, on Monday. Do you consider him to be a normal boy now? How else would I consider him? Mum replied tersely. Cameron, what about your friends? How have they taken to your new heart? I haven't seen any of them since my operation, I admitted. Dr. Bryce, Dr. Ehrlich, Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey, Cameron. On and on they went until my head was buzzing with question after question. Mum, I whispered. Mum bent her head down so her ear was next to my mouth. Mum, I don't want to answer any more questions. I made sure my voice was no more than a murmur so the microphone wouldn't pick it up. Are you tired? She asked, immediately concerned. After a moment's pause, I nodded. Excuse me everyone, but my son is getting tired, so I'm afraid we'll have to leave now. Cameron, are you feeling ill? Just one more question. One more question, Cameron. A number of the reporters had risen to their feet now. The lights were making me feel hot and sick. I desperately wanted to leave. Mum stood up, a steely look on her face. I knew that look, and for once I was glad of it. Mum was leaving, and nothing and no one could stop her. Dad stood up and put his arm around her before helping her, then me off the raised platform where we sat. I could hear the murmurs of disapproval and protest as we left the table. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ehrlich and I will be more than happy to answer any further questions you may have, Dr. Bryce soothed, and I have a very important announcement to make today. Today, I can formally announce that my clinic's next xenotransplant will take place next week. Everyone was on their feet shouting questions at that, but I let it wash over me. The man who had ushered us to the table appeared to show us across the studio to the exit. As he walked past the chairs, I risked a glance at the reporters. It was feeding time at the zoo again. They were devouring me with their eyes. A man pushed forward and stuffed a white envelope into my hand. Another woman knocked over her chair in an effort to get to me. She handed me a large brown envelope. I frowned down at the letters in my hand. What was all this about? And then we were outside the studio. The air felt cooler. I leaned against the wall, took several deep, relieved breaths. Thank you for attending the press conference. The man with the headset shook Mum and Dad's hands. I'll just retrieve his mics. I unclipped the mic, pulled it out from under my shirt and handed it back to him. He smiled at me. You did very well, Cameron. I didn't answer. Anyway, you take care and good luck to all of you. Take the lift over there down to the ground floor. The receptionist will make sure the car is here to take you home. Thanks, Dad replied. Is that it, Dad? I asked. Do you think they'll leave us alone now? Mum and Dad looked at each other. Let's hope so, Cameron, Dad replied grimly. Let's hope so.